Hello, everybody out there, and welcome back to the Mebois Podcast, episode 8. My name's Josh.
And I'm Ray.
And today we're starting off a little more serious note. Stuff going on in the world today. Ray, what do you know about this, the New Zealand shooting?
Well, the thing that a lot of mainstream media is focusing on is his little shout out to PewDiePie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, you didn't hear about that part?
No. I mean, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and I've sort of avoided looking up a lot of details on this, so no,
Yeah.
I had no idea about that.
Yeah, well, so I had known there was a shooting in New Zealand.
Mhm.
What I was not aware of was that the guy fucking streamed it onto his Facebook page.
Yeah, that was one of the first details I found out.
Yeah, so
Pretty crazy.
I was having dinner with my friends, and one of my friends found video, and he pulled it up on his phone, and I couldn't fucking watch.
Yeah, that's the kind of, I mean,
it's like,
I'll get more into it later, but there's a very sick angle. I mean, all around, but then also just in the whole digital part of this.
yeah, like
Um,
it felt weird because obviously I'm not.
well,
trying,
it should fucking feel weird, right?
Yeah, I know. Like I'm trying not to watch it, but it's just one of those things where you're trying not to watch, but you kind of have to see. And considering what was going on in the video, it's very quiet in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And all that's happening. It just, but it feels a lot more real than obviously the movies do. But I'm trying to avoid watching it. Everyone else is trying to watch it.
Yeah, I don't really understand people wanting to watch it very much. I mean, people in general will like go on like gore threads and stuff, and they'll want to look at gore and all that. I'm not a fan, but it is sort of interesting because just whenever something like this happens, and I watch news pieces on it online, and in the comments, if comments are allowed, because oftentimes they aren't allowed anymore because of this shit.
Yeah.
Like, you'll always get like the worst of the worst in the comments, and a lot of times it'll be people sort of like Alex Jones, where they'll basically be either implying or directly saying that this is a fake event that is being perpetrated in order to like remove guns from. I mean, usually it's an American conversation.
Yeah.
But even in this case, because the prime minister, or is it the prime minister or is it the president? I can't remember.
Of Australia? Or New Zealand?
New Zealand was saying that they were going to change their gun laws or whatever. But so you've always got these people saying ridiculous claims like that it's just like sort of a false story in order to
push an agenda,
heighten gun control. Yeah. And they hire crisis actors and all that. But it's very interesting that people can't even say that with this, because there's literally a video of it happening.
Yeah.
And that's crazy.
It's
like, I don't think that's happened with any of these. I mean, I'm sure it's happened with some, but I can't remember.
I can't think of one where the guy, streamed what he was doing. Like I'm sure there's been some events where maybe footage was recovered off someone else who was recording.
Yeah.
Just for evidence sake. This guy streamed it. And
but what were you saying about? So what did he say about PewDiePie?
So yeah, so I can't remember the exact details of it, but basically he's in his car, he gets out, and just before he enters the mosque, he says, "Subscribe to PewDiePie."
Oh God.
So obviously you have a lot of like mainstream media who kind of want to pin some blame on PewDiePie, which is crazy to me.
I mean, that is absolutely. I mean, it's almost insulting, really.
Yeah, like
Uh, well, not even almost. It is just because like anybody can say that. I mean, it's subscribe to PewDiePie. That's a meme now.
yeah, it isn't exactly.
Um,
It's sort of like what you go. What if he had said, if he shouted his support for, I don't know, a sports team? Do you assign blame to said sports team?
right.
It's
Or if you
ridiculous.
said subscribe to T Series.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
but yeah, I was just looking to see if PewDiePie had put anything out about it. I don't see
he
anything,
tweeted.
but I didn't check his Twitter. Oh, he tweeted
He
about it.
tweeted out that he said something along the lines of like he's disgusted by the fact that this guy uttered his name, and he said, something along the lines of thoughts and prayers with everyone who was affected and blah blah blah. And then, but you have like reporters who tweet out that PewDiePie should what's the word, claim, not responsibility, but he should be more aware of what he does and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just so far off base. Because, like, I'm not like an avid follower of PewDiePie, but nothing I've seen him do in any way is sort of suggestive to his fans. Like, hey, go shoot up a mosque.
Yeah, no,
It's too much of a leap.
no, he's a silly guy. That's it, really. And
I'm all sorry to cut you off,
no, go
but I
ahead.
think with the whole PewDiePie versus T Series thing, which has sort of been like a huge growth boost for him, the one thing that's been concerning about that is I sort of see it as an excuse a lot of times for racism, more or less,
Mm-hmm.
just because like people always have to take it one step further, and so now all of a sudden people are like just very like racist against Indians, which is like, it's stupid, but like even that, if someone said that, like you should take responsibility for people being like rude as hell, like I don't agree with that, but I could sort of see where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
With this, I guess the angle that they're going for is like people like to box him in with like alt-right white supremacists and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where they're coming from.
Yeah,
which is just false.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll get into like the guy's manifesto in a bit, but people also are trying to blame the right side, the politically in America for all of this, and I don't think
in America.
Yeah, they're trying to blame American Republicans too for all this Trump and all that, and I don't really see that either.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, if anything, it's internet culture.
Yeah, because
I mean, whether that comes from American sources, I don't know. But I mean,
go ahead.
At the end of the day, basically, I mean, it literally comes down to whoever perpetrates an act.
Yeah.
So we can't just sit here and pretend that like that someone is so heavily influenced by something that they're going to do something that they wouldn't do.
Yeah, exactly.
When it's something that's this extreme, like if you're influenced to like buy an article of clothing that you normally wouldn't buy because you're in some sort of subculture, that's something you might be influenced to do like that. But something like this, that's within yourself more than anything.
Yeah. So basically, people are trying to box the shooter in with the alt-right and far right people, and I think from what I've read, the general consensus is this guy doesn't really consider himself a rightist or a leftist. I think he labeled himself an eco-fascist.
Oh God!
Whatever that means. And his entire purpose, apparently he's been planning this whole thing for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
His entire purpose was to create a civil war in the U.S.
A civil war in the U.S.
about gun rights and everything.
by killing people in New Zealand.
Yeah, so to start, it's basically to keep that conversation of gun control going, like, but it's always around, and then to basically to take advantage of things like the subscribe to PewDiePie meme.
Right.
This guy had it all planned out. It's 87 pages, and some people kind of write this guy off as a confused rightist, but a lot of comments I'm reading, they're like, this guy, because I think, well, I'll take their word for it. These people who are commenting say they read his manifesto, and they're saying this guy's not confused at all. This is he's doing what exactly he wanted to do, as he said in the manifesto, and based off media reaction, he's getting exactly what he wanted.
I mean, it is very strange that people very quickly want to assign it to some sort of political leaning.
They want a scapegoat.
I guess it's sort of understandable. Yeah, I guess. Well, so once again, I was sort of avoiding a lot of this just because, it really sort of, I feel like a lot of people feel this now, where it's sort of like you feel a burnout on tragedy.
These sort of stories, yeah.
Because there's just so much now that we have available to us that every time this happens, I'm going to hear about it whether I want to or not.
Well, this one I would assume would be very, very new for New Zealand.
Well, yeah, it's very strange for it to happen there.
I think I saw somewhere that they have maybe 30 murder cases a year in the whole country.
Yeah, crime is, at least violent crime like that, is not nearly as common as it is in like the U.S. and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the city of Christchurch itself, I hear, is a very quiet city.
I mean, with a name like Christchurch, you'd think people just praying and all that here.
Yeah.
But so when I was looking at some of the details, there were multiple arrests, weren't there?
Were there? I'm not sure about that.
So it was just one shooter?
I think so. That's what I know. I know there were 2 mosques, but I feel like it was the one shooter.
And he killed 49 people?
Killed 49 people. Yeah, he had a rifle. I mean, so it was Friday prayer, so a lot of people are going to be in the mosques.
Right. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah, dude. I'm not sure. I know it wasn't during the actual prayer, so it might have been before or after.
Mm-hmm.
So there were lots of people just around, and I found out that there was actually one of the people who was killed was actually an Indonesian man who lived in New Zealand. So you're getting reaction here too.
Right. I'm sure, and also the fact that it was in a mosque. I mean,
yeah. Let me see how many arrests there were. The Prime Minister thing, maybe because like you said, we've seen so many stories like this in the U.S. and not necessarily a lot done in terms of law. So the whole gun control law change in New Zealand kind of came as a surprise to me. And then once I thought about it, I'm like, not really, because New Zealand's pretty small.
I mean, New Zealand already has, I didn't research it, but from what I'm learning from this, New Zealand already has pretty strict gun laws.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to have this turn into a whole sub-conversation, but I just want to say, like, I feel like people in positions of power
mm-hmm.
feel the need to have a reactionary something. They feel the need to actually do something in a reaction in order to, like, appease people.
Right. Which is...
I don't think stricter gun laws fixes this problem.
No.
I just don't think that works.
There's always a way.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm not exactly the kind of person who's like, yeah, let's arm our high school teachers.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's also like people will have access to guns if
they really want them.
If they want them. If you restrict gun laws, you're basically, you might restrict some access to people who want to commit crimes with them, but mostly you're just restricting access to regular citizens who will responsibly own the guns. There's no way. I mean, even with laws about people with mental illness owning guns and whatnot, there's just no way to filter everyone who has these sorts of things in their minds. Because if they have a plan to execute this, then they're not going to give that information away until they've secured all the weapons they need.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't make laws that account for human evilness, basically. So I think changing gun laws, it's a gesture, I think, that the prime minister needs to make, so that people don't crucify her. I think it's a her, right?
Yeah, her.
Because everybody would be like, well, what are you doing? Why wouldn't you do this? So I understand why they would, but I don't think that changes anything.
No. Yeah, it's the whole, and like I said, I don't want to get too much into the whole just gun control in general, but basically I used to be of the opinion, like, what use is a gun basically for a rent, like, the average citizen, but looking more into the issue itself, it's not so black and white when it comes to getting rid of guns completely and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I mean, I always kind of hate when people do this and say, like, well, what if somebody in that position, what if the good guy had a gun? But it is something to think about. Yeah. Like, if someone was concealed carrying, maybe less people would have died. Now, I think it's kind of disrespectful to be like, I'm not implying that people should have been concealed carrying or anything like that. I don't think that's their responsibility. But if that was true, maybe some lives would have been saved. I don't know. Or maybe that person would have also been a crazy person and would have committed some other crime. Who knows?
Yeah, it's a whole,
the way I see,
gray area.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it, it's sort of like it's the curse of human invention. It's like a smaller scale atom bomb, basically.
Yeah.
The fact that a country has nuclear weapons, it means that other countries need to have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
For no other reason except that another country has them. And the same thing with guns. I mean, more than ever now, with these things being more common, I've never had too strong of an opinion on it, but I do think now more than ever, I think it is important where if someone feels strongly about concealed carry or open carry, depending on laws or whatever, I think they should. Just because there's a pattern here. And I mean, I do want to talk about sort of like the internet culture and how sort of this is spread. But there's definitely a pattern here of sort of attention seekers sort of going for the high score online. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's so evident here with this guy live streaming it. I mean, it's basically just a game for them. And that's sort of another reason why I think, laws don't work to prevent human evilness, like I was saying, because you can't really do anything to a person who doesn't value their own life. Yeah. Like, well, this guy didn't die, right? This guy survived. He got arrested.
Yeah, he got arrested. Oh, and it was just the one guy who was arrested.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that's an interesting point you brought up about that basically you can only punish someone once they've done something.
Exactly.
So,
and if they don't value their life, it doesn't matter what the punishment is.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this guy was willing to die to do this. I'm actually surprised he didn't kill himself, because generally that's what happens. But I guess he was willing to go to jail for the rest of his life. I don't know.
Well, guy like him, probably he wants to.
I guess he's more about his message or whatever.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, I'm sure. Well, I mean, if he's allowed to, I don't know, but I'm sure he's going to get fan mail in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the crazy thing is, like, so this is what I heard. I didn't watch the live stream, or any recording of it or anything. But from what I've heard, at the beginning of the video, he goes to the door of the mosque or whatever, and there's like a guy standing there at the door, and the dude welcomes him in.
Yeah, he said something along the lines of like, "Hello, brother,"
come in, brother, or something like that. Yeah, like that really got me. I was like, ah, man.
Yeah, that was yeah, that sucked.
Like, there's such a gap there in like human kindness. Like, there's such a wide gap between what humans are, where somebody could be so kind and then somebody could be so evil. It's like, I don't know. That's sort of why I like to avoid this kind of stuff, because it's like, you can't account for that.
No.
Like, that's just crazy.
It's like isn't that a similar situation to what was the church shooting in Texas, I think?
What, the bullhead kid?
I think it was like a white kid who shot up a black church.
Yeah.
Wasn't he like someone who went there kind of regularly?
I can't remember all the details. I think he might have gone there before or whatever, but I know, like, he actually was in the service for a little while before he did it. I believe.
Yeah.
And I think he had gone previously. Yeah. I mean, that's like, I don't know. It's like, I know they always target, like, you know, it's a large group of people, probably unarmed, they're unaware, but like, it's such a cowardly thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, and I remember, like, especially when I was younger, I went through my phase of like, breaking away from religion and being like, oh, fuck religion, whatever. But like, something like that would never cross my mind.
Right.
Like, that's absolute insanity.
Yeah, I mean,
and I don't know how much of it had to do with, I guess we could sort of talk about what you've read about the manifesto, but like, I don't know how much of it had to do with religion or race or whatever. But that's just like, it doesn't even seem human to me to have that sort of thought process.
Yeah.
That somehow you could achieve what you think is a righteous goal through acts like that.
Yeah, by gunning people down who were worshipping. Yeah, and especially, actually, I'm not even sure if I'm not sure if they were in the middle of actually praying or if they were just at the mosque. But I know, for example, that when Muslims do pray, they're pretty like, and people in general pray, they're just they're invested in that moment. You know, they're
you're at your most vulnerable.
Yeah. It's, yeah, like you said, it's a fucking cowardly move. So with the manifesto, like I said, I haven't seen the whole document. I don't particularly want to. From what I've seen people write about, I don't think there was much about religion, but it was definitely about targeting a group of people who were definitely going to get the media going. And so the shooter himself, he's Australian. He's not from New Zealand. So I don't know what the position of the guy who said this was, but someone in Australian government, I want to say parliament? I'm not sure exactly. But he wrote out some response where, he said, thoughts and prayers with the victims, blah, blah, blah. But then he sort of turned his message to anti-Muslim immigration.
How so?
He said, I'm gonna find this quote. An Australian senator blamed Muslim immigration for the attack, basically.
No way.
He was also hit by an egg recently, the senator.
Oh, that'll show him.
Yeah, he's at this little press conference, and this teenage kid is behind him, and this kid puts his phone up, starts recording, and smashes an egg on the guy's head, and everyone fucking tackles this kid and has him in like a chokehold, and all these Australian guys are like, "Feel happy with yourself," and they're all in like flip flops and everything. It's
Australia is wild.
Yeah.
I bet that egg boiled on his head too. It's so hot there.
Boy, do I have egg on my face.
Get him.
Here you go. Here's his statement. His statement is... Alright, so he starts off with, "I am utterly opposed to any form of violence within our community, and I totally condemn the actions of the gunman. However...
Oh, man.
Don't
you love when people start sentences like that?
However, while this kind of violent vigilantism can never be justified, what it highlights is the growing fear within our community, both in Australia and New Zealand, of the increasing Muslim presence."
Oh, God, dude.
The real cause of bloodshed on New Zealand streets today is the immigration program, which allowed Muslim fanatics to migrate to New Zealand in the first place. That is Senator Fraser Anning. And boys,
I have a feeling I know what this guy looks like, but I'm just going to look him up anyway.
Before you look him up, tell me what you think he looks like.
I'm going to be wrong. But I feel like he looks like a fat, blonde guy with very little hair.
So Boris Johnson. Actually, Boris Johnson has a lot of hair. He does have very little hair.
Oh, he's not fat.
Yeah.
I don't think I had to say white because that was what I was thinking. But
dude,
he's 69 years old.
Look. When it comes to having your opinions on immigration and whatever, fine. Have your opinions on immigration, what you think is best for your country, whatever, even if maybe they're bigoted or whatever. But to say that right after it happened, I feel like...
Well, he's using it as a platform.
Yeah, it's just...
Which is kind of disgusting. But that's the thing. I feel like things like this, people always want to lump together, restricting immigration and whatnot and racism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always the case. Even here, it's not, it's tertiarily racism, but Islam is a religion, not a race.
Yeah.
But sort of it is racism just because, certain races tend to be Islamic and whatnot.
Yeah.
But, for a second there, I was just thinking, is that racist for me to say? But, I think there are certain reasonable limits to immigration that make sense. But you can't, I just don't think that it's ethical to restrict immigration based on religion. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and also in the wake of people of a certain religion being shot up.
Yeah, that's such a weird cognitive dissonance thing.
Yeah, and then you blame them for it.
Yeah, it's yeah, that is wild, isn't it? Because Muslim people get killed, and then, presumably Muslim because they're in a mosque, and then you're saying this is terrible, but this just highlights, people have these real concerns about Muslims being here, and this is what happens. It's wow.
Yeah, they're so concerned they're going up and shooting them. I
Yeah,
guess
they're
is
so
his
concerned
point.
about being safe that they have to preemptively kill them. I mean, so this was like part of, because I was watching stuff on YouTube about it, and the classic mistake. I look at the comments,
Yeah.
and so many of the videos had like mixed likes and dislikes, and the top comments I was seeing, at least early on, I don't know if it's any different now, but the top comments I was seeing were along the lines of like, one was like, "This is why multiculturalism doesn't work."
Yeah, I saw similar things, and I saw people took screenshots of the comments people left on the actual live stream on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
There was just some pretty disturbing shit there too.
And it's just like reading that was when I stopped reading the comments, because I'm like, how can you be so off base with this? It's like, that is not at all what this is. Like, you've literally got a mentally ill person who's actually trying to make you think that, like, wanting to. It's interesting because I didn't know that was his angle.
Yeah.
Was wanting to start like a civil. I mean, I hear talk about that shit all the time. It's like, the U.S. is in a very strange time, just because people are getting very, very defensive about their right to bear arms, and people are constantly talking about another civil war. And I think what most people don't realize is like 95% of people do not want that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. Like, the only people who want that are literally radicals who use the internet to make themselves feel more normal, because they can talk to other radicals that are also in the minority.
Right. It's the loudest people in the room who
basically,
right? Yeah, it is a strange time for the U.S. in the gun thing, and I think the whole culture thing too. Because, like, you have, I obviously don't want to lump in the whole Jussie Smollett and this in the same category, but in terms of like the whole culture and the race thing, I don't know, it just riles people up like crazy. And on a smaller scale example, I just feel like it's a weird thing. I felt like I never really thought about race, and then I went to college in the U.S. and then it seemed like every discussion was about that, about people who think about the whole white privilege thing, and then you have the other side of it, like, oh, actually, you know what? Maybe just cut this guy. I'm not sure what point I'm trying to make.
No, I mean, I get what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
Like, do people ever talk about like white privilege in Indonesia?
No, never.
It's such a strange thing that like the better off. I'm not trying to say Indonesia is not well off, but like the more developed a country is or whatever, basically the more rich people you have, the more people like to invent problems.
Yeah.
It's a very strange thing where, like, if you have existing problems, you won't worry about it. But as soon as life is okay, people start creating these problems for themselves and others. I don't really know why, but it's a weird thing. I mean, it's sort of like I was talking earlier about the curse of human invention, and then also there's this weird thing where humans can never be happy. They just reach a new plateau, and then they want something else.
Yeah, they want a new battle. Not battle, but they want a new fight, whether it's a new ideological fight, maybe. And like I see it everywhere. It's not just, it's seeping into like everything. And
well, especially just with the internet, which is a whole aspect of this whole thing in New Zealand. But yeah, I mean, no idea stays in one place anymore.
Yeah, and then
And well, yeah, no idea stays in the same place anymore. And in some ways, actually, in a lot of ways, that's a very beautiful thing. And it's exactly what the internet is all about.
mhm,
It's being able to communicate seamlessly, being able to share ideas, discoveries. I mean, scientifically, it's amazing. But then, on the other hand, sort of like I touched on briefly before, um, you have these people who are, very radical in their ideas and methods, and whereas normally they might have felt uh, more alienated by society and therefore less uh, willing to express these ideas or act on them, they sort of have these communities where there's somebody else, maybe across the world, maybe in their own country, where they share those same ideas, and they're on a message board that is about this stuff, and through that they can also radicalize other people. I mean, an interesting thing about like a terrorist group like ISIS was like how they used the internet to recruit.
yeah,
And it's the same thing with white supremacists, and it's the same thing with any other sort of terrorist group or hate group. Is that you're able to use the power of the internet to take hold of these lonely, sick people, and you're able to shape them into soldiers for your ideological battle, which the whole ideology is based on like a couple people's fucking
opinion.
Yeah, warped opinion of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that always happened. That's always happened at a smaller scale throughout history, but now we're seeing it in such a way just because communication is so easy and because the internet exists, that radicalization has such like uh, such a chain reaction event. Like, I mean, as a kid, and that wasn't that long ago, like I hardly ever heard about school shootings. Like I had heard about Columbine,
Mm-hmm.
and then I remember Virginia Tech, and I'm sure there were smaller ones that I never heard of. And I mean, part of it, I mean, it's like also internet exists, so everything bad that happens, like I was talking about before, we're gonna hear about.
Yeah,
But it's definitely happening more now. I would like actually to see like a study on like how much more often it is happening. But like now I hear about it. Like I feel like almost every week I hear something, not on this scale, but something like this.
yeah. I think
And it's such a
it's like you said. You have all these people who maybe have these ideas that they know people in their circle probably don't share, and they go on the internet, find people like them who are probably a little more crazy,
yeah.
and recruit them. Yeah,
And like it's sort of it's the once again there's that dichotomy because just like the communication, the internet, I mean, it's mostly an amazing thing. In a similar way, that sort of connection that can be made is also a good thing in many circumstances. Like you have people, you know, maybe someone who is in the closet or something like that, someone who's homosexual, and they feel completely isolated, and maybe by their family and their friends or whatever, they're able to find the community online.
yeah,
So in a lot of ways, it's good, and I think probably in most ways it's good. But then also there's that sort of trade-off, just because humanity is the way that it is, and you can't really predict it. That same resource also allows um, radicals to be formed.
yeah,
And there's just like sort of like I was touching on with gun control, is that there's no real way to control it, because you can't control the human mind, nor do I think you should be able to.
mm,
Um, and if you somehow restrict communication or restrict the internet, well, first of all, it just doesn't work. because like you see how China tries to censor the internet, people get around it. You see how every country that tries to do it, people get around it. And then if you do successfully censor something, you're limiting both. You're limiting both the people who are doing something positive with it and the people who are doing something negative. So you're not really giving a net gain to the world at all. It's just, I don't know. It's a bit hopeless in that regard.
I want to switch to a different subject, but I think it does connect in terms of this culture war and everything like that, and using the internet and things like that.
Okay.
And maybe it's a little sudden with the change, but before Captain Marvel even came out, you have people automatically who hated it, and we have people who automatically would love it.
Yeah.
And look, obviously, it's a completely different thing with New Zealand, but it's a similar sort of thing with the culture war in it. And then, so when the movie came out, I looked at the rating on IMDb, and it was a 5.4. That's a piss poor movie if it's a 5.4. And then you look at the reviews, and you see people who leave 1 stars, and you see people who leave 10 stars, and there's no one really being reasonable about anything.
Yeah.
You have people who just have an agenda. They want the movie to fail because Brie Larson said some shit at some conference. And then you have people who want the movie to succeed because of those same comments. And it's a very, like, I just want to go and see a movie, man. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah. What strikes me is that none of that is a movie. Like, none of that is what a movie should be. At least in my opinion.
It sort of it goes back to that point I made about how it's seeping into everything.
Yeah.
Everything is a move because of an agenda. And maybe it's not an agenda thing, but because the talk is out there, it's in your head that it could be.
Well, I think in a lot of ways everything is sort of an agenda thing.
Yeah.
It's funny because just our previous conversation and this one, sometimes I feel, and I think that's also just another internet thing where you'll see people talking loudly about certain things, but a lot of times I feel like I'm the only person who doesn't like conflict.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like everyone wants to pick a battle about something. And when it comes to Captain Marvel, everybody was ready to fight. But I mean, it's strange that movies have taken on. I mean, I guess it was a little it was a little too generic or whatever to say. I don't think that's what movies should be in regards to, like, I think movies have an important role in that, like, they sort of make people talk and they challenge people's ideas or whatever.
Right.
I don't know if that's what Captain Marvel was. I didn't see it. But I don't think that's the discussion here where people are, like, having their ideas challenged and they're talking about it. I think it's more like people come with their preconceived ideas,
mm-hmm.
and then they just throw them at each other from across the room, and then they never talk about it.
Yeah,
that's the impression I'm getting.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what it is, because you obviously have all these creators on YouTube who are voicing their opinion, like, oh, Captain Marvel is going to be the end of the end of the MCU, and then you have people who are like, oh, it's going to be the best movie ever, blah blah blah. And then read the comments and you're like, oh, there really is this sort of battle going on. Movie comes out, I enjoyed it. I will say they were a little not too subtle with certain things, but I can sort of get it. It is the first, like, female lead movie, so they're gonna do what they're gonna do. Whatever. Still an enjoyable movie.
Oh wait, so Wonder Woman isn't Marvel, right?
No, Wonder Woman's
right.
DC.
DC.
So Captain Marvel enjoyable, has plot flaws, has character flaws. You know, just like any movie would have. It's not a masterpiece, but it's not a total fucking disaster either.
Right.
And so you get people who review it, and then it was pretty refreshing. And like all these reviews, they're very balanced. And then the majority of comments are like, "Huh, so this movie is exactly what most people really thought it was gonna be. Just, it was gonna be decent. It wasn't gonna be completely horrible or completely amazing."
Mm-hmm.
And there was some sort. I got some sort of relief out of that because everything I saw leading up to it was just, it's gonna suck. It's gonna suck. It's gonna suck. It's gonna end the MCU, and obviously that's not something I want to happen.
Right.
But yeah, people are just, and it seems like no one wants to really, like you said, have an actual discussion.
Yeah, no, that's not what it's about. Yeah, no, it's very. I mean, I don't know. It's like, I like to pick my battles because once, like I was saying, like I don't like conflict, and I especially don't feel need to have conflict over movies. Because at the end of the day, like, if people are being so influenced by movies, then it's like, well, I don't know what to say then. But yeah, people aren't. I feel like a lot of people really aren't watching. Like, it's not about the movie at all. People just want their next stepping stone on whatever argument they're trying to make, probably online. I mean, speaking of picking your battles, I remember, was it Brie Larson, the actor's name?
Yeah.
I remember the thing she said. What was it, like? I'm trying to limit how white and male my
reviewers are.
Oh, was it the reviewers, or was it like the entourage she had on tour or whatever?
Yeah, sorry. It was through the reviewers that she realized how white and male it was, so she wanted the interviews, something like that. Yeah, she wanted her interviewers to not be all white man, basically.
And like, that really, hit me the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, because like, I feel like people, sort of like how with the immigration thing, everybody's, well, not everybody, I'm being generic again, but if you talk about limiting immigration, automatically it's a race issue. In the same way, when people talk about diversity, like she was talking, I mean, what she was talking about was diversity.
Yeah.
Automatically, you think that this is a good thing to say.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Like, the problem is that, no matter how I can intellectualize it, I am biased because, I'm the group she's talking about. I'm a white male.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I'm going to feel biased about that. However, like, there's certain things that you just hear that they just hit you and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's a matter of inclusion, not exclusion, which I guess is the problem I have with it, because, and maybe she just worded it poorly or whatever, but people, at least on the internet, I've experienced this less in real life, but it still exists. People feel very free to basically use the white male card and just be like, we're not including this group, and you all know why. And it's like,
yeah, it seems very,
it feels very crazy to me, considering, like, we're certainly, I mean, in the U.S. as a country, and then the world in general, we're certainly not done with racism. Like, that's not an issue of the past.
No.
And so I feel like people don't really realize that when you say shit like that, I mean, I think that's racist.
No,
Like,
I agree. But then you have it really blew me away when we were in college and someone said you can't be racist towards white people because they're the ones who are in power.
oh God.
And I'm just like, I don't think that's the definition of racism has anything to do with power. I get that's how it's been used, but it's not the definition of it.
I actually just wanted to look this up really quick.
What, the Brie Larson thing? Or the definition?
The definition.
Oh.
So Merriam-Webster. I feel like I'm starting like either a graduation speech or a best man speech or something. A belief that race is the primary determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race.
Right, so it's the belief your race is superior.
That's right. And that race is a primary determinant of human traits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, I think people have sort of created a social definition where it's about power, especially in the U.S., because, I mean, slavery is a real thing. And it's such a big part of the history of America. And I mean, the history of the world in general, but, America. And so people, I remember hearing, I haven't heard it so much these days, but I remember exactly what you were saying, of people saying, you can't be racist against white people because they hold some sort of power. And I mean, saying that as racist in itself, because once again, a belief that race is the primary determinant of human traits, like holding power, like, it's just always, and I'm not going to turn this into the white man pity party, but even though it already is a little bit, but
you can't pity the white man.
It's called reverse pity because he's got so much power. I don't know. It really brought back a lot of those feelings when I read, someone in such a commanding position like that, in a way, just sort of belittle who I am. And like, I don't really like being a white dude isn't like my primary, I don't consider that like my most defining characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
I think physically it is, and that's what people see, which is another problem there. But then, but still, I mean, I am a white man, and that's what people see. So when I see shit like that, it feels bad, man. Like, that's what it comes down to. And people will like, flame her all day online and like stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's just like, you're just a human being making other human beings feel shitty, man. Like, don't do that. Yeah. So that's my Brie Larson rant.
Don't make people feel shitty, man. End of rant.
I mean, yeah, there's a cure for racism. Don't make people feel shitty. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't really interested in watching the movie anyway, and I don't think that would have stopped me from watching it if I did want to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure it did stop people from watching it. I mean, at least people talked about that.
Yeah, and then you have people who are like, "Oh, there's some sort of conspiracy with bad reviews being like taken down."
Oh yeah, I mean we fall into these patterns online. I swear to God. But like, yeah, that's sort of a thing always, is people saying, "Oh, they're taking down reviews on like Rotten Tomatoes," and then like on YouTube, "Oh, they're removing these comments." That might be a real thing. I don't know, but a lot of the time, I think it's people, basically fantasizing about persecution, which is sort of what, I mean, the whole like ragging on white males thing is that, like I was talking about with when people have it so good, they like to create problems. It's the same sort of persecution complex, where like, you know, um, yeah, I don't know. People like to be persecuted in theory. Um, so like we were talking about earlier with Jesse Smollett, it's it's the same sort of like ghost ghost problem that people like to use in order to get pity points, and in his case, money and whatnot. And I'm guessing in her case, it was also about money because she would be seen as a an activist and a forerunner for diversity by saying something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure part of the fucked up culture we have now is I'm sure part of her feels guilty for being a white woman. So it's like, hey guys, I'm one of the good ones. It's like, don't, like, you know what I mean? Like, don't do that to yourself. Like, I mean, I'm stretching. I don't know if that's true, but like, I get that feeling when I see people doing stuff like that. It's like, don't lump everybody into this weird pocket. Like, that's not how people work. Like, if you truly believe that, then you are actually textbook racist. And I don't really want to sit here and accuse her of that. I mean, there's so many factors there. And, people make racist statements without being like, truly racist themselves.
Yeah.
Like, just because someone says something racist doesn't mean like in their heart they believe like people shouldn't have equal rights or anything like that. But I mean, what she said there, I think, is racist. Welcome to our 10-part series on race in America.
I just think the whole the white guilt thing was pretty funny because I remember being in high school and I can't remember what story we were looking at, but our teacher asked us our opinion, and then I can't remember what it was, but eventually everyone in the class basically felt white guilt, and the teacher just like, no, come on, have an opinion on this, don't cop out behind guilt. Let's actually have a conversation.
That's exactly what it's about, is not letting how you're born limit what conversations and what activities and who you can interact with. Like, that's the whole point of humanity, is that diversity exists, and there's culture within that. I think that's what throws a lot of people off, is they don't think about that. Like, they see that a lot of times for geographical reasons, but like different races tend to fall into different cultures.
Yeah.
But like that doesn't mean that culture is inherent within the race. That's not what that is.
Mm-hmm.
That's just groupings of people. Like, that's not some sort of inherent difference. Like, the only inherent difference is like physical looks, which is very hard for people to get past, which I think is like a lot of it. But like, I think people don't really understand culture that much. And the idea that it's just this socially constructed thing, largely based on where you are and who you're around.
And who raised you, basically, too.
Yeah, basically who raised you. And they tend to just lump people all up, and it's a strange thing.
Yeah, well, it's a conversation like I like talking about, or I like hearing about too, is also just tribalism in general. Because
right.
I feel like no matter what, people are always going to find something to differentiate themselves from you.
Yes.
So, and I feel like that's exactly what like sports teams are. It's just tribalism, and you have, it's funny because, for example, you have the Yankees and the Mets, and people who are like fans of the baseball team, or fans of baseball in general, they're like, I'm a Yankee fan, the Mets can go fuck themselves, whatever, right? But then, my aunt, she likes baseball. She's not a big sports person, but she's like, you know what? I just want a New York team to do well.
Mm-hmm.
because you know what I mean. It's they're just different levels of tribalism. And I think I was listening to what's his name, Brian Callen, and Joe Rogan. I think he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was basically saying like, yeah, you know what, you get rid of racism, people are gonna find something else to fucking complain about.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's sort of, yeah, that's exactly sort of what I was talking about before with like, if you eliminate a problem, of course you can't eliminate certain problems. Like you cannot eliminate racism because that's an idea, and you can't really limit human ideas. But yeah, something else will come up, and it'll be the sports team, or it'll be where you live, which is also part of the sports team thing too.
Yeah.
That tribalism that you're talking about exists pretty much in every facet of human life. And it's interesting too, like even digital tribalism exists. What websites you use, what communities you're a member of.
Oh, right, like Reddit versus 4chan.
Sure, or PewDiePie versus T-Series, let's say.
No, that's Indians like, versus white men.
Yeah, basically. And yeah, I mean, I think that really just shows that is something that is inherent in human beings.
Yeah.
That's something that's beyond culture. It's beyond race. It's something that's hardwired into us for our survival in the past.
Yeah.
And actually in some places, still sort of tribalism is, well, I guess in a lot of ways, even in developed nations, tribalism is still a survival tactic. I mean, you can think about like gangs in inner cities.
Yeah, that's true.
People join gangs because they want to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that community aspect and the protection aspect, the same as actual more traditional tribes that you would see. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. But also it's just another dichotomy, man. Everything's got two sides, where it's a positive thing in that, I mean, another word you could have for tribe is community. And when you think of it like that, I mean, that's a great thing. Humans are social creatures. We need one another. But then on the other side, tribalism. And, it's not enough. That's a great, I can't remember what it's from, but it's a great quote. It's not enough that I should succeed. Others should fail.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what that's from.
Let me see.
But, I mean, that sums it up better than anything I could say, I think. I think it might even be from something stupid like a comic or a cartoon or something.
Let's see. So it says the earliest record.
Kevin Chang yearbook.
There's a Kevin Chang yearbook. I saw that. But the earliest record of this quote is from Francois de la Rochefoucauld.
Is that a French guy?
Yeah. I don't know who he was. It doesn't say what but 1613. First, it's a quote similar to that, but not quite that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, something like that was said that long ago, and I mean, it's still very relevant. And I think it always will be.
Yeah, probably.